Hi and welcome to the Holistic Podcast. Today I have the pleasure to speak with Camy Kennedy. She's a mindset and life coach working with high achievers to create breakthroughs in health, wealth and love. With a background in molecular biology, neuroscience, and psychology, she provides a framework for incremental success. And it's not about being perfect, it's about practicing your potential. And I resonate with that very much. So, hi, Camy, and welcome. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm happy to have a discussion with you. And we were talking a little bit about creating values, connecting to values, and why this is non-negotiable. So this is something which I really am passionate about, having your core values very clear for you and then not making compromise around them or about them. So I would love to hear what you have to say about it.
Mm-hmm. So let me first give you a little bit of my background. And I think this is where this came from. I was in a long-term relationship for 9 years, and it was not a relationship that was in line with my values. But at the time, I had not defined my values, so I didn't really have a guidepost other than realizing that I wasn't happy in that relationship. So it took me about 4 years to work up the courage to break up with him. And I started doing personal development, hired a relationship coach. My most transformational year was 2018 when I went to Bali. And when I went to Bali, I wanted to work on my business. And that's when I was transitioning into life coaching from fitness coaching. And I had broken up with him earlier in that year in 2018. And then I was setting an intention in Bali to transform my business, transform my life, and then also call in a new relationship. So what was so important is that I had a clearly defined set of values so that when I went back out into the world and was calling in this ideal person, that I knew what I stood for. I knew what was important to me. And one of my coaches said, your values are important, my values are important, but I'm not going to let your values override my values. And I think when we come from that place, then we're able to have better partnerships, intimate partnerships, business partnerships. We're able to connect with people because, you and I connected on the basis of this is something that's important to us, therefore we can partner on this. When we're not clear on our values, we start to say yes to what other people want us to do. That's what I was doing in that relationship. I was just letting him kind of tell me what was important. And to him, physical appearance was really important. How much money you made was really important. And I started to adopt those values. And I realized those things are not important to me. What's on the inside is what matters. So when I came out of Bali, my number one value was intimacy. And a lot of people think, oh, physical intimacy. And it wasn't. It was being vulnerable, being transparent, being very real, because prior to that, in that old relationship, I always tried to be perfect. I always pretended that nothing hurt me, that I didn't have any needs, and that did not get me anywhere. So when I showed up on the dating scene, my number one value was intimacy, which was I am just going to show the person I'm dating or who I'm talking to who I really am. And I'm going to be 100% okay with that. And I release the outcome of them liking me. That didn't matter. What mattered only was that I was going to show up as who I really was.
It is fascinating to listen to you because it is like I'm hearing myself speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there are quite a lot of people who came to the same conclusion due to different life situations, because when you are unhappy, when things are not going the way you would like them to, and when you're not content with the life as it is, your life as it is, of course you start asking some questions. Any normal person will do that and come up to the conclusions that the unhappiness, the discontentment, this nagging feeling inside is because what I value and what I need is not aligned with whatever I'm doing or whatever situation I'm allowing myself to be into. And then I have a spiritual master, and I'm very, very, I'm very happy that I found him. He says like this: your transformation starts making compromises. And it is really like that. So in the moment you stop making compromises, you start transforming, because then you get also stronger. And when you are authentic and when you stand for whatever core values you have, people who have the same values will come to you. So of course you create the grounds for happiness in your life.
I love that quote. That's a really good one. And so I think we hear about values a lot. It's very common in personal development books, business books. And I think the question becomes, how do you actually attach to your values and become like, have them like really embodied? And the way that I did it was to have a vision for what I wanted, and then start to realize that there's a gap between how I'm operating, the things I'm doing, the things I'm saying, and what I actually want. So, and then I started to have the freedom to play with words and make up new words. So I have one, and I think you'll like this one. One of my values is energuition, and it is the combination between energy and intuition. And so starting to have that sacred time and space where I do my spiritual practice, my meditation, I connect to source, I connect to my inner self, but then also trusting that the clients are coming, trusting that the right partnerships are coming. And then also when those opportunities are presented, trusting my gut, that first response of, is this something I want to move forward on or not? Because in the past, I would just say yes to everything because I was coming from a place of scarcity. Like, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. And just this last week, I had to say no to something. And I was kind of wrestling with my inner self saying, well, no, we should do this. And then my inner self was like, no, this is not for you. And that's okay. And that's the same thing I did when I started dating. That first week, I found somebody who, really made me feel good, but they weren't aligned with my values. And at the same time, I had to listen and say, even though he's really attractive, even though he has all these things, he's not actually aligned with my values. And as soon as I said no, I stopped talking to him. I manifested my now husband, and we just got married in February of this year. But I had to say no to that one guy who was dragging me down. And I think that was a test too from the universe, just saying, are you ready? Are you really ready to actually be in line with your values?
I definitely believe that things work like that, because when you are hanging on to something which is not good for you, you actually don't make space for the things which are good for you and which are meant for you. So you occupy the space with something which doesn't really work because you are afraid of letting go. We have all kind of fears, unfortunately. So hanging on to something which is not good actually blocks you from receiving what it is good for you. So I understand completely, because this is also my perspective upon how life works.
And I think there's two ways to make your values. I'm sure you teach all of your listeners about the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. And a lot of times we'll make decisions in our conscious mind and say, well, these are my values. This is what's important to me. When really you want to make your values from your heart space so that you're like, yes, this is important to me. And you feel really grounded and you feel really centered in that that's what you stand for, versus just making up values that maybe you're just borrowing them from somebody else. So I encourage people when they're doing this, it's like trying on clothes. You try on a value, you see how it feels, and then to really be in line with your value, you want to be actioning that each day. So if you have a value of, let's say, integrity, that's one of the ones a lot of people use. Is your life lining up in integrity, or are you just using that as a value because it sounds good?
It's also something which is spot on with what I believe, because if you really have core values, so they are at the core of your being, you live like that. So you are a role model, you are an example of those values that you say you have. Otherwise, it doesn't add up in my mind. So if you have a value like, for example, integrity, then everything you do will have integrity in it because it's at the core of your being. So for me, from a certain point of view, values, what I value is also in the same time qualities that I manifest. If I value, for example, intimacy, then of course I will be a perfect, or at least as good as possible example at intimacy. Otherwise, how can I have it as a value if I don't practice what I preach?
Mm-hmm. And I think, to your point, we could make a list of values and just be like, here they are, but it's actually making it a practice of having them in front of you, looking at your day. How did I practice intimacy today? How did I practice integrity today? And the reason I say practice is because let's say you do choose integrity, which mine, I don't have integrity on mine because to me, that's kind of a given, right? That's kind of a given. So what I have, a couple things is flow, disimplicity, which is the combination between discipline and simplicity. So a lot of times I would try to make things too complicated and then it would get hard. So I'm looking for how can I be in flow, right? How can I show up? And why I say practice is because if we are talking about, I work a lot with perfectionists, like recovering perfectionists. And a lot of times we want to do everything perfect. So I chose not to choose integrity because that means in my head, I have to be perfect at everything, right? And I would really disappoint myself. So what I aim for is like, how can I be a level 9? And how can I like move in the direction of showing up more in this way? So also part of mine is health, right? Making the right choices for health. But also part of health and wellness is forgiving yourself when you do make mistakes, because we might have values as a guideline, but we are still human. And even though we might have a spiritual practice and we feel, you know, I don't know about you, but I feel like great when I'm in the spiritual field, but then I have to operate in the physical with physical people, which means there's going to be opportunities for me to make mistakes and other people to say things and maybe I react. So it's also practicing forgiveness for yourself each week, each day, so that you can continue to move forward in your values instead of getting so disappointed because you didn't do exactly perfect today and then getting stuck.
It's a bit funny because what does perfection mean? I am 100% sure that what perfection means for me is not the same as for you and is not the same as for anyone else. So perfection is a mental construct that we come up with. We have some standards, and in our mind that represents perfection. And probably if you are looking from a hierarchical point of view, what it is perfection for me, it's really far from perfection from somebody who is on a higher level of evolution or transformation that I am. So it's such a relative term to play with, perfection. So from this point of view, it's a little bit funny. And I also hear what you say with feeling very well in the spiritual dimension and doing the spiritual practice and being in that type of spiritual universe. But for me, I'm using an expression which is called being integrated in the universal harmony. You can call it flow. It's the same reality behind the words. So when what I do is integrated in the cosmic harmony and I have this flow, then there is not so much resistance. And when you don't have the resistance, when you are going really with the flow, you allow so much more to manifest for you, through you, for others. So then you are at peace, and then you operate from a completely different inner state than go for it, and now it has to be perfect, and all these requirements we put on ourselves, or all these we want to live up to a mental image of ourselves instead of paying attention to who we really are. And I know I can do much better, but this is me today, and I'm doing the best I can today. And I having that as a goal to become a little bit better and to transform and to evolve on a regular basis. But I am human. My intention is to do the best I can today. And when I will be perfect, I will be able to judge myself from that standpoint. But right now, judging myself or beating myself because I don't live up to a mental image of me, it's not very healthy mentally to do.
Yes, I totally resonate with that. When I started this work, I actually started in fitness, and my standard of perfection was being on the cover of a magazine. So any day that I wasn't exactly like the cover of a magazine, which is also a false perception, right? Because there's airbrushed, it's unnatural, people diet really hard just for that one day for a photo shoot. But I put myself through that for about 6 or 7 years of always having that as my standard. And anytime I fell short of that, I was disappointed, and I was always working towards that. And funnily enough, it was on my vision board to be in a magazine. And I think in 2017, I was published in Oxygen magazine. I was published in Muscle and Fitness Hers. I was in one of their ad sets. But what's so interesting was it didn't make me feel better about myself. I wasn't like, oh, yes, now I've made it, right? Because that internal practice of feeling like I'm not enough for 7 years, it didn't go away when I achieved that goal. So now I understand, just like you were talking about, what is perfection, what is 100% or level 10, I'm probably at 2%, level 2 of what my potential is over the next 10, 15, 20 years, right? But in this moment in time, I'm doing the best I can to get to my level 10 in this moment. Because when I get to that next level, I'm going to raise the bar again and go to the next level. So I think what I've really learned to release, and what I help my clients release, is we're never going to be done with the growth. It's not like, okay, I'm done, I made it. It is, well, now there's a new level to go to, and enjoying the process of aligning with your values, of showing up, in the best way that you can in that moment with the tools that you have, and realize that we're on this transformational journey. And, me looking back at me 11 years ago, I was a very different person, and I am amazing in comparison. But in that moment, I had a certain set of tools. I had a certain modality. I had a certain type of thinking. And again, in 10, 15, 20 years from now, I'll look back at myself to this day to say, oh, she did really good, but I have so many more tools and so much more evolution. So it just comes back to loving yourself in the moment and having that deep compassion for yourself as you're on your journey to personal growth and development.
And it is also interesting because you don't even have to expect or to wait for 10, 15 years. Sometimes the inner processes, and especially now, I feel that everything is a little bit accelerated. So we are pushed to evolve in a little quicker pace. So we cannot stay in the kindergarten psychically, spiritually forever. So we have been in the kindergarten enough. Now it's time for us to grow. So things are a little bit accelerated. It doesn't require 10 years to discover that the person that I was for 1 month ago compared to today it's quite a difference in a good sense. So you can see the transformation sometimes from one month to another. And for me, this is the most important, the strive to transform yourself. And for example, in the holistic yoga system that I am practicing and that I'm teaching, it is said that we use approximately 3-5% of our capacities. And even the science says the same thing. Probably, because you're the neuroscience and psychology, they say the same thing. We use approximately 3% of our abilities. I don't have enough imagination to envision myself with 100%, but I'm going there. So every single day I'm doing something in order to be a better person, to really have this, I call it spiritual aspiration, and put it into practice and do the best I can every single day. I make mistakes. I have to allow, I'm joking with my students and I'm telling them, you need to allow yourself to make mistakes, because making a mistake, that's not the problem. The problem is when you make a mistake and you don't learn anything from it. So use the mistakes you make as life lessons. Okay, I did that. That was the consequences. What can I do better next time so I don't repeat? We will make another mistakes. At least don't repeat the same, because then it's really, you don't learn anything. You're just a little bit on the same track. So we learned and we evolve. And this for me is the most, for example, when it comes to a relationship with a man, the most attractive, the sexiest aspect in a man is his strive for transformation. I don't care how he looks like. I don't care his age. I really don't care how much money he has. If he has the strive for transformation and he goes for it, that's the sexiest aspect in a man for me.
Yes. And there's a couple points. The first one is, you've clearly defined one of your values as transformation and growth is important to you, right? And so then anybody who comes into your space is going to align with that, including a man. And I think it's so beautiful, because once you identify that, and I'm speaking to your listeners too, once you identify that, then you realize the looks are not as important, the money is not as important, and you can release that and really attach to that person or that relationship that's really going to fulfill both of you. And then my other point that I wanted to make, piggybacking off of yours, because I completely agree that we're going through like quantum leaps of transformation in this time. And I also believe, because of the things that are going on in the world, it's requiring us to really assess our internal world, to sit with ourselves, to reflect, to notice, to grow. And each and every day, we actually have the opportunity, moment by moment, to learn and transform. And we can go to sleep learning something and waking up the next day with a new tool in our toolbox and a new experience. And what I find is, I talk about the breakdowns and the breakthroughs, which they go hand in hand. And I think in any transformation, you're going to have breakdowns, where something happens, you make a mistake, or you're emotional or anything. But what I've noticed over time is the length of time between a breakdown and the breakthrough becomes shortened, where you might have the breakdown, process it, sit with it, allow it, and then that breakthrough might come within the next 10 seconds. So what's beautiful is we start to shorten that time of having that breakdown. And I say this to say, I kind of had a breakdown right after I committed to life coaching for like a whole year, where I was like, well, let me go back to work and let me do this. And God, source, the universe was like, no, it's time for you to get back out there, right? Get back out there. And now I've noticed this year of 2020, I've shortened the gap between those thoughts of either doubt, or is this going to work, or whatever comes up, or something doesn't go your way. I'm able to move through it a lot more gracefully than I had maybe 6, 5, 4, 3 years ago even.
It is also something which fascinates me. Our ability to process whatever it is necessary for us to process, so that we can grow in a quicker pace. I can, for example, look now at some situations that I am into in this period, if I would have been in this situation for, I don't know, 4 years ago, it probably would have broken me. But now I'm looking at it and say, okay, I have this ability, and in combination with that one and with that one, I will just make it work without the inner suffering and tormenting of going through that, because now I have, I'm kidding, I'm speaking a bit like this also with my students. Now I have my anti-stress muscles stronger and my intelligence muscles bigger. And so because of the transformation, what I can cope with now is better than what I was able to cope with for even a couple of months before. And when you start experiencing yourself these amazing consequences or results of your transformation, you will not want to stop transforming when you realize what it's doing for you.
Yes. And I don't know if you've heard the quote from Tony Robbins, but he says, pain is guaranteed. We're going to go through life with pain, but suffering is a choice. And the way that we suffer is just choosing over and over to focus on the story of our situation and what we make it mean about us. So I've done the same thing where I make this life event, like maybe getting fired or breaking up with this relationship, we can attach to, there's nobody else out there for me, or I'm never going to find another job. And we can suffer in that, or we can choose to believe that that relationship or job or thing no longer serves us. And now we have the space to explore and allow that new thing. And I always believe the new thing is better, is coming to us.
It's definitely like this. For example, in the integral yoga that I practice, we are also doing breathing techniques. And it's a very good analogy, I found it, because it said like that. Why are you doing breathing techniques? Because we breathe all the time anyhow. So why go through a breathing technique? Well, because when you hold your breath, you are creating somehow the space for the energy which will come into to be on a higher level, on a higher frequency. It will have a better quality. So we can, analogically speaking, we are doing a little bit of breath work also with all and any internal processes. When we make space, it's what will come in, the new thing, will be on a higher level if we cleanse the space, if we process the information. Otherwise, we will attract things on the same level until we will be so tired of being masochistic that we will grow, we will learn what we have to learn, and we'll move on.
Yes. And it's so interesting. I was on a call last night, very similar to what you're speaking of, where she's a friend of mine and she teaches Kundalini yoga. And we were discussing, we spend a lot of our day just trying to get our energy back to like base level energy. And we were trying to manifest this life, and we're trying to call in all these things, but our energy is so low that we're just trying to like survive, right? So when we can break that threshold, and I'm thinking also of the vibrational scale of emotions, when we can start to have our emotions higher at a higher level, then we're no longer just trying to survive. We're moving into that energy of thriving. And I know, at least me personally, in the past, mornings were hard. It was hard to wake up. It's hard to get your energy going. And it's funny because this morning I knew I had this call with you, and it's 6 a.m. my time. I used a new practice this morning, and there was the breath of fire, and I felt it, and I was like, oh my gosh, why have I not been doing this? Right? Because it heightened my energy. And even though I was tired and it was still morning, I did about 15 minutes of breath work and intention setting and calling in the light and gratitude. And it completely shifted my energy within 15 minutes. And I think we can habitually, and I'm speaking for myself too, we can habitually get into a routine that's not serving us, or maybe it served us for a little while. And when we're ready to go next level, it's time to get that new routine. And that's exactly what happened for me in June. I was like, you know what, June, I'm going 10x. I'm 10xing everything. So that means I'm changing my routines. I'm changing my workouts. I'm going outside to work out, adding in different new modalities to take me, instead of just surviving, thriving, 10x level. So I think it's important to once you have your values and you have your patterns of behavior, if your result is not lining up with what it is you desire and you're not moving in that direction, look at those patterns, look at those routines, and then up level them, which usually requires doing something uncomfortable, because breath work isn't necessarily comfortable, right? It challenges you. But the result is something really amazing because you realize a lot about yourself during the breath work.
I don't so I have been practicing the holistic integral yoga system for 31 years. And I speak from my own experience and from all my colleagues in the same spiritual schools that we belong to. Transformation will not all the time be dance on rose petals, because transformation means you will have to become conscious of all your inner, let's call it universe. And you will find absolutely amazing aspects about yourself, but you will also find all the aspects in connection to your ego, selfishness, the dark side of your inner universe. And you will have to deal with that as well. So awareness upon yourself and the internal work is what allows us to transform, because, and also what you are saying, the changing, adjusting the habits from time to time, but that requires a constant awareness of yourself. And I really hope that more and more people will understand that putting almost all your focus on the external world is not serving you, not so much. So the wisest choice everybody can do is to have a certain amount of focus on the external world so that we can function more or less optimal in the physical world. But most of the focus we should put on our internals, on our inner universe, and adjust, transform, shift, heighten the perspective, do the necessary inner work. Because let's be honest, even if we have the dream profession, still at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself, with your emotions, with your thoughts, and with your states. And no matter how good you are at your profession, you also have to be very good at being a human being with everything that includes. So I cannot see any other, I haven't found any other way of transforming than to pay attention to what is inside, but just transform, cleanse, shift. And sometimes it is not comfortable.
Mm-hmm. I love that you gave, like, I like to measure things, right? Because I came from a background of like, you get grades in school. Are you doing good, right? And I think a lot of times people try to measure from the external. How much money do I have? What's my job like? You know, maybe what are my relationships like? But actually measuring, am I becoming a better human? Am I getting 1% better each day? That's really what matters, because there are people that have everything externally and on the inside they're suffering because they've never mastered the internal. So I love that assessing and connecting with the inside. Am I, and taking the pressure off, again, to be perfect or to be this perfect spiritual person. You know I'm really great when I'm meditating, but then I get in my car behind somebody who's driving slow and I have an opportunity to figure out how I'm going to deal with that. Am I going to, yesterday I went to the post office and it was my first time out in the world for a little while. And I was like in a rush. And what I was noticing is I was like, why am I in a rush? And there was nothing for me to get to. I didn't have any appointments. And I started to reflect and notice, well, I'm just always used to being in a rush. And I'm always used to being triggered by people who are moving slowly. So that was my opportunity to just be like, it's okay. I don't have anywhere to be. Like, that was my lesson for yesterday of there's no reason to rush. It's okay. Like, enjoy every moment. And so I think in that perception, looking at each day and the lessons that we have each day, life is beautiful no matter what our external is. And we have the choice of what we want to focus on.
Yesterday, I also had a situation. I was having a Facebook Live, and of course, I announced it and I invited people. And there were some of my friends who said, "Yes, we'll be there for you and we want to listen," and so on. So I put and makeup and I sat in front of the computer and I opened the Facebook and I opened the live and I start speaking, and after 30 seconds I noticed that the image froze. And I thought, well, maybe it's a little bit of a glitch, but people can still hear me. So I spoke for 10 more minutes just to discover that the internet connection was down. So I was speaking to an empty screen. And on the other end, people were saying that, where are you? We are here and you are not here. What are you doing? What's going on? No idea that. So it took me about 10 minutes. And I was, the feeling that I was embarrassed because I had an appointment with some people. I promised them I will be there. And for me, punctuality is important. So I was not there for them. I felt embarrassed. And then I started laughing and I said, you know what? No matter how well prepared you think you are, life will still surprise you. So what do I do in this situation? I cannot do anything about it. It's done. It's over. So now I have to choose my reaction to it. I can choose to react with frustration, disappointment, and so on, and feel really something unpleasant about it. Or I can laugh at it, relax, and then just tell people what happened and reschedule the Facebook Live and go about the rest of my day with no mental issues and suffering. So, and life, it is like this. Life, it is surprising. So one thing that we can do is to have this inner flexibility and adaptability to the flow of life and making choices which are healthy for us from any point of view. Because how many times can we change the situation? Not very often. But what we can always choose is how we react to it. So I'm joking many times with my students, and I'm telling them, please don't end up in the category of being a masochist and choosing some form of suffering when situations are not going as we want. Because if life will go like that, we will be bored to death if everything will go the way we imagine it will go. No surprises, and also no chances for us to grow.
That's so funny you talk about technology, because at least in the spiritual community, I feel like technology is a lot of times a barrier to the work that we want to do in the world, because it's like we have to go through the Facebook or the internet to get our message out. And it is funny that allows us another opportunity to practice being who we say we are, because it's very easy to meditate in the woods out in nature and be connected. But as soon as we have it, and I believe like there is energy with computers and there's so it's like two energy fields coming together and learning how to work together. So I often consider technology like a person. Like it's just like having that relationship with a person who has their own energy field. And a lot of times as spiritual teachers or as people who are wanting to do the work, we have this opportunity to reach millions of people through technology, but that can also be our point of challenge. And we are able to rise to that challenge. And I totally understand where you come from, especially with Facebook. So that's funny.
Yes, it was for me. It was. I started laughing when I realized that I was speaking alone,
Mm-hmm.
still
Yeah.
believing that okay, it's just the image who froze. It's a glitch, but people are listening to me, so I'm there for them. I'm doing what I promised I will do,
Yes.
and I was just speaking alone. I said, okay, it happens. What can I do? I can feel badly about it, or I can simply tell people what it happened, apologize, and do it another time.
Yes. I love that. That's so good. And I think we can create our story about those situations too. Like, you could have created a story that, oh, I'm not living in integrity, I'm not being punctual, and that's not good. And, maybe somebody listening would have done that, or maybe they would have beat themselves up. A lot of times when I work with high achievers, we have a high standard for ourselves. But then what happens is we can go down a deep spiral of shame and guilt. And then when we're in that shame and guilt, we're not able to be productive, right? If you would have stayed in that space, you wouldn't have been able to serve from that space. So just releasing it, forgiveness, allowing, I love how you laughed. You're like, you know what? I'm just taking this too serious. It's fine. We take so many things so serious. So how can we bring play and fun and laughter and lightness into the work that we do or into our relationships?
I'm sometimes I'm presenting things like this for my students. I tell them, look at it from a pragmatical point of view or a practical point of view. Okay, this is the situation. I take as an example this with the Facebook Live, which was everything but live. So okay, this is the situation. What can I do something about it right now? No, the internet connection is down. I cannot fix it myself. So what do I choose? And make a choice which, from a practical point of view, is giving you the best solution to the given situation. You cannot change the situation. You definitely can choose how to react to it so that you can create a solution which is the best in that moment. Otherwise, um, you can even ask yourself these questions. Okay, if I'm getting very frustrated or angry or disappointed or ashamed or guilty, does that um, change the situation? Does it fix it? No. How does it make me feel? Bad. Is it helping? No. So why do you do it then? Don't do it. So choose something which instead creates the best solution in that moment to that given situation, and then next time you'll do it better, or next time you'll have to hope, pray that the internet connection is not down. So if you look at things from a practical point of view as a high achiever and ask yourself which is the best solution in this situation that I can create, and you will never create something which will be bad for you or detrimental for you or put yourself down. So for me, from a certain point of view, that is high achievement. When you are able to create the best solution to a certain situation, no matter what the situation is.
Mm. And I think the first step is realizing that we have a choice on what we focus on. And that's what we focus on is what we find. And I remember when I first started doing this work 10, 11 years ago, I wasn't aware that I had a choice. So even just knowing that we have a choice is a step in the right direction. And I think your choices will develop over time because we're developing new neural networks, new neural pathways. If we've chosen, I just get angry right away, we need to practice a new neural pathway of, and even just neutrality or courage or awareness. A lot of times I think we try to go from like anger to love, peace, joy, and happiness. And, that transition, we have to go the whole way up the vibrational scale of emotions to get to abundance. But how about we just aim for neutrality or acceptance? I mean, acceptance is so powerful of just, I'm not going to try to fight the situation, because using that energy to fight, to your point, is getting me nowhere. The situation is still the same. So let me accept, open up, look around, and start to find what can I focus on that's going to propel me, energize me, move me forward. What can I have gratitude for in this moment? And as soon as we do that, it's like it opens up a new part of the brain and gives us a new pathway to go on that maybe we've never traveled on before.
Yes, I have been speaking about rewiring our brain because I also study a little bit of neuroscience. I'm not a professional in that domain, but I'm passionate about also the scientific aspects in regards to the same area, for example, meditation or yoga practice or spiritual practice. Uh, for myself, but also because people nowadays, the modern people, they need scientific proofs. So if I come and say the yoga system says this and that, all right. But if I come and say the science has proven and this and that, all right, then they accept it. So usually I make a combination of science and spirituality so they can see that they have actually, many times they say the same thing or they arrived at the same conclusions. So rewiring our brain is very important so we can get rid of the negativity bias.
And are you familiar with the work of Joe Dispenza?
To a small degree.
Okay, so I was just going to make a book recommendation for everybody listening because his stuff is so good in terms of combining the science and the spirituality. And there's a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And basically the premise of it is we've practiced a pattern for 20, 30, 40 years of our life. And that is essentially who we are, who we've become because of the pattern. The neural pathways in our brain relates to how we show up in the world, relates to the outcomes that we have. And he essentially teaches being able to heal your body from the inside. He actually healed himself by using spiritual practices after he got hit by a car. He was told he would never walk again. And he used these deep meditations and inner practices of imagining his body being healed, of imagining a different life. And I mean, he holds workshops all across the globe, and he's had testimonies of people releasing themselves from cancer, releasing themselves for these chronic illnesses. But I also think of this in the same way of, if I've been a certain way in relationships my whole life, then it's up to me to go within and shift and transform. If I've been a certain way in my career my whole life or in finances, we can do the same thing. And back to your point, it's internal, not external, right? A lot of times we think we need to do, but we need to be aligned internally with what it is we want to create externally. And then we'll start taking those aligned actions in the physical world that align with what's going on in the internal world.
I didn't find any other way of things working than this ability to have the integrations, to really have the alignment within, so that whatever you create inside of your inner space is what you will have as a reality sooner or later, depending on your level of energy, depending on your ability to focus. But whatever is going on inside, that will be your external reality sooner or later. So I haven't found any other way of things working so far, and I have been testing many things for all my adult life. So if somebody finds another path, please let me know, because I didn't find any other way of things working. And actually, I don't believe that there is any other way than the work with yourself, with your inner universe, to make it harmonious, to make it balanced. And from that space you create. If your inner space is out of balance, your reality, your outer reality will reflect that. If your inner space is balanced and healthy and harmonious, your outer reality will also reflect that.
Yes. And I don't know about your school system over there, but at least in the US, we are not taught that. We are not taught about internal spirituality. We are taught you do these things, you get good grades, you go to university, you get a good job, you work hard, that brings you success. So oftentimes we are coming up with transforming everything that we were taught and everything we thought we knew, and realizing that it's the inner work, it's the spirituality. And I think it's important, and I do the same thing too, to show the science, because I think a lot of people, including me even, are questioning, does this really work? I wasn't taught this. This is something new to me. But once you start on your own spiritual path, you get confirmation every single day, moment by moment, that your energy is what attracts things to you. It's not what you're doing. Because for so many years, I was doing everything, but I was misaligned in my energy and things weren't coming. I was just always fighting. I was fighting the reality. And now that I've learned to surrender, release, really be aware of my energy, and make feeling good and having good energy, making that the most important thing first and foremost.
I totally agree, because in all school systems, I don't know of any school system which teaches you how to be. All the school systems are teaching us how to do and how to have, but nobody is teaching you how to be. And that's the most important aspect. And it's, of course, because we are, to a certain degree, maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but we are brainwashed with a certain view upon how things are and how reality is. We don't even question the system. This is the system, so that has to be true. And imagine the surprise when you discover that it's actually not how reality works. And you can even have a shock depending on how tight you are attached to your mental image of reality. And you can even have this, I believe it's called cognitive dissociation, when you refuse, you simply choose to hold on to your mental image, to your illusion of reality, than to confront yourself with the reality itself. So I don't know of any school system where they are teaching you how to be. And eventually we will get hit by reality. And we will have to realize that, wait a minute, the chemistry, biology, math literature that I learned in school is not helping me in this moment to cope with the storm of emotions that I'm experiencing, and with the negative stream of thoughts that I have in my mind. So can I use math? Can I use biology? No. What can I use then? And then you start searching for something which helps you to deal with, to be, because you already have been taught how to do and how to have. And it takes you to a certain degree somewhere, but it cannot take you all the way.
Yes. And that's so interesting. I remember learning in physics, actually, about how we are just space, like we're not really here. And I remember, this was so many years ago, but I was like, what are you talking about? And at that time, I just didn't want to believe that, because it felt too far-fetched. And now it's very interesting. The quantum model, quantum physics, that is what is going on, right? That energy level, the electron level. And so it's very cool that now there is a science that starts to explain and help align what's going on spiritually, what's going on energetically, and we can create our own reality. And this has been proven in science too. Things change when we observe them. You know, the way an electron behaves changes when you look at it. So that is giving us the confirmation that we have the ability to be creators and create our own reality, depending on what we're focused on and what our energy is aligned with. That is just so cool.
Yes, it is. I thank you so much for today. It was a brilliant conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
And for
me.
those who want to get in touch with you or to find you, where can they do that?
they can go to my website, camykennedy.com. If they go to /links, I have a bunch of downloads, perfectionism download, I have a values worksheet, and then of course they can always connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Camy Kennedy.
Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Hope to speak to you again soon. Subscribe and get access to all the training videos, those already published and the ones on their way. I wish you a wonderful day.